I always wait for the official here on. Mr. President, Commissioners, it's now 11:30.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ada County Highway District. We will begin our pre-commission meeting by asking if any of the commissioners have a question or comment about the agenda.
Mr. President, I just have one question, and I don't know if the staff is here who's handling the project on number 6, the new roundabout. I just want to make sure, I couldn't tell from the designs and the description. I am hoping it does not have a bypass lane. But it doesn't say that. I just want to make sure that
It has 3 of them.
that was,
The only
So,
one,
To keep going.
we're getting rid of a bypass, a really bad bypass lane at Vista and Overland, and we have been pulling out our hairs on the one on, what is it, Emerald and, not Emerald.
Mr. President, Commissioner Hanson, I don't have an answer to that yet. I will have one before the meeting starts.
Okay, that'd be great. I know, I noticed a couple people.
President Goldthorpe,
yes.
Commissioner Hanson.
Oh, Bill's on.
So Gulf Development Institute, but it does not have a bypass lane.
Great. Thank you, Bill. That's what I wanted to hear.
Has
You
3.
made my day.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I just want to say I'm really excited about item number 3 on the consent agenda. So just really excited about
Okay.
that.
All right. Anything else? In that case, we'll turn the time over to the director for his report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners. Again, good morning. Always great to be here. I wanted to draw your attention quickly, though, to the work session that you're going to have. It's a very important work session. And as you've seen, we have designated this as possible action items. So what that means is you have the opportunity within all the bounds of rules, regulations, statute to make decisions during this work session. I'm going to encourage you to please have those discussions when it comes down to funding, what you think is important and what you don't think is important. That helps us move forward, continue to move forward in the planning process going forward. I'm going to ask you to look very hard at when we talked about the integrated 5-year work plan, when we get to what the Commission's priorities are. That is a tremendous opportunity for you to again have those discussions, and you can make a decision or direction at that point in time if you so elect, because we are moving forward. And it's always great to have these your direction and your requirements up front early as we continue down this path. We'll also be emphasizing a point when we get down to other types of revenue funding in the integrated 5-year work plan, especially the resolution that you very successfully passed last year that put savings for capital projects based on final costs, that sort of stuff, into community programs. The General Counsel at that point is going to give you a presentation that might help you more codify that as we get to that point going forward. But it's a very important work session, as they all are, but this is unique because it's you can make decisions during this one or give direction to the staff. With that, I'd like to start out. We had a very important event on Monday, Commissioners. I'm sure you all were well aware of it, and you saw it on billboards, you saw it all over the place and stuff, but Commissioner Pickering celebrated her birthday, and today we do have a couple special goodies over here at the break to commemorate that very important date on Monday. So Commissioner Pickering, as we always do, happy birthday from the entire team. Now, something I'd like to share with you. Again, I've been in front of you now for several months talking about the challenges that your team is having regarding increasing challenges in retention and recruiting of individuals across the board. These, they're not going away. As a matter of fact, this morning I learned of 2 more members of our team who have submitted their resignations, all for great reasons, great opportunities across the board, but it continues to be a challenge for all of us to bring in replacements. Right now we stand anywhere from 20 to from 20 to 27 openings here, which again, over the big picture of how many people we actually have is not huge by any stretch of the imagination. It's about a 5% opening rate. But the challenge is that when we bring on someone new, it seems that we also have another retirement or an opportunity. And we've looked at this, and it's, again, other than the retirement challenges and such, or the expected retirements, we're seeing some interesting things. And I think I've shared some of these with you in the past, but I just wanted to share with you again a couple of these. Number one, I call it the COVID effect. A lot of people are, and this is across the country, are reassessing their lives at this point in time. The country is coming out of over a year, hopefully coming out over a year of restrictions and such. A lot of people lost opportunities to continue to fulfill their objectives, their professional objectives. And now what we're seeing, what everybody's seeing across the country, is people are making different choices. People want to do something different than they have in the past, and they are pursuing those opportunities regardless of where they are. Like I said, we've had people decide that they want to be nurses. They got accepted. That's absolutely tremendous. We have people now that are attempting to help their family business, which had been struggling and such. They're out there doing that. We have people that are being picked up by private industries because they are, again, growing as the economy continues to go, and we are a tremendous training bed for all. We always have been, and we always will be, and such. And as I said, but we're not alone in this. We're seeing our temp agencies right now, not only here but across the country, when it comes down to those very important aspects of construction operations, flaggers, being difficult to, and you are on notice, sir. It's becoming very difficult. We think we'll have about 60 to 70% of the fill rate that we expected. We hope for more, but as I've said to everybody else here, hope is never a good strategy and such going forward. So, that is facing the Ada County Highway District. CDL drivers, and I want to thank you again for giving us the opportunity to increase our maintenance capabilities to answer just today's issues. But CDL drivers across the country are becoming in short supply. Why? Go back to the COVID effect. People want to do different things. And even though the private industry is paying pretty good dollars for CDL drivers, we're still expecting a fuel shortage this summer. We're expecting more construction materials shortage. Why? Not because it's not there, it's just they don't have the opportunity for people to move from point A to point B at this point in time. And as I think I shared with you last week, as an example, plywood. A couple months ago, $12 thing, now over $50. And your partners in construction, your partners in development, they're seeing this on a day-to-day basis. And of course, those rises in costs translate immediately to rises in costs for the consumer across the board. And then the unemployment opportunities, and I'm calling them opportunities now because the dollar figure per hour is pretty good. And so people are making determinations as to, if I'm receiving this, there's no reason at this point to go back, especially in the service industries. Construction, our industries and such, and you're probably seeing more on TV now than you have in the past about business owners desperately looking out, trying to hire more people in to do to help them survive. We're at a job fair again today. We'll be at every job fair across Idaho as we move forward. We're looking at new concepts, new ideas. I'll be launching something here very quickly called Operation Reconnect with just the folks that we've brought on board that we haven't really been able to have a personal one-on-one with them during the pandemic and such. So it's interesting. People's perspectives are changing, and we have to be flexible in assessing and understanding those changes in order to continue to recruit, retain, and attract the best here at the Ada County Highway District. So,
a question, Bruce.
Sure.
I know we have all kinds of continuing education and professional development here. Do we have anything that can help us with maybe GEOs or our recruiting for CDL
We are, as a matter of fact, I've already had that discussion a little bit ago with HR. We're looking at different things to include mentorship programs. In other words, we bring on a college student or a young person now. We mentor them part-time, but we guarantee them a position here at the Ada County Highway District at graduation. We are looking at all sorts of different things that are probably not a common occurrence for a government organization, but the same token, we can't be in that mode. So yes, we are looking at those.
We are not the employer of last resort.
That's a true statement. And so we're looking at everything across the board from if there are other things we can provide. We're looking at a complete salary restructure. We're looking at all sorts of things that we'll be bringing to all of you in the next couple of months for your thoughts, considerations, of course, decision and directions. But this issue will not go away, at least for the foreseeable future. And as I said earlier, when people are changing expectations, when their expectations are different, if we're not nimble and flexible to at least address them and attempt to and somehow get to an agreeable solution, we're going to be on the back end of where we don't want to be and such. So we're looking not just today, but next year, and year after that, on how we either transform, improvise, change, or enhance the opportunities for people here at the Ada County Highway District. So it's going to be a challenge, and I'll probably be back in front of you again multiple times, letting you know where we stand on this sort of issue. I shared with you last week, this week, earlier this week, an issue we had on Philippi Street and such. I'm not going to get into specifics. I've got the confidential police report and such, but I will assure you that we are taking the appropriate actions to ensure that our construction partners, our team members and stuff are safe, and that the individuals involved are having to answer to all of the proper authorities for the actions that they may or may not have taken. Investigations continue on this, but at this point I am not stopping the project, but our team has been in contact with the appropriate authorities, and I will be speaking with the appropriate chief here as soon as we're done to make sure that everybody and everything is where it needs to be to ensure that stupid doesn't arrive. And I'm not talking about an individual, but stupid overall doesn't impact any operations out there. It impacts safety for people across the board. Commissioners, as a reminder, Health Fair is going on, the annual Health Fair. The next two opportunities are May 11th and May 20th. It's biometric screening at its finest. We get a lot of great, our team members get a lot of great insight into that. And if you would like to participate, please let either Stacy or me know, or HR, and we'll make sure that you are scheduled appropriately. Because again, as we did last year, we are not having just a line up and go. We are still abiding by all the appropriate CDC Central Health District requirements. So you have a time, everything is appropriately spaced and safe across the board. And such, and there is no truth to the rumor that for commissioners we have bigger needles. And so
They're 6 feet long, right?
we did that once, and that commissioner almost had a heart attack. But that's another different on its own. And just as a final thought here, I just want to let you know that I will be in and out this week. I'll be on cell phone and email and such, but I probably will not be in the building or around the maintenance operations as per normal operations. I'll keep you posted on that as we go forward. So with that, commissioners, that's my update for right now. Do you have any questions for me? Okay. Well, then I would invite you to participate or partake for as you would like in some celebratory birthday stuff, and we'll start committee on time as we always do. Okay. Okay, commissioners, thank you.
For 6 years, we've usually had like 2 openings here. 2 at a time.
usurping some of your. Okay. Director Wong?
Mr. President, Commissioners, it's now 12 o'clock.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Ada County Highway District Commission meeting today. As usual, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Again, welcome. We will begin the meeting with entertaining a motion to accept the agenda or to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We'll go now to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless the commissioner or any of you from the public so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. And all consent agendas items are action items unless noted. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Then we'll go to the regular agenda, which we will complete in record time because there's nothing on the regular agenda. So we'll move over to public communications. Stacy did nothing on public communications. Then I will adjourn our regular commission meeting and we will move immediately into our work session, which is the fiscal year 2022 budget and integrated 5-year work plan. We call these early considerations, and this is a possible action item for reasons that you'll see as we go through this work session. So, Christy, are you first?
Christine is up.
Okay. He put you on there, Christy. I think they were just testing me. All right. Then between our 5-year integrated work plan guru and our budget guru, we will get both barrels today and appreciate every word of it.
Oh, I can't minimize it. How do I do this? Oh, God. Hang on. Here, right here?
Nope.
Oh, what's that one say?
That's it.
We're off to a great start, folks. Don't worry about it.
Sure.
Okay,
All right, here we are. Slideshow from the beginning. Whew, there we go. Do you want me to take this off?
oh, yes, please, yes, yes.
All right, Mr. President, Commissioners, Christine Tandler, Budget Coordinator for the Highway District. Today I'm going to go over some early considerations for the budget. Feel free to stop me throughout should you have any questions. I'll be followed up with Christy, who will go over the early considerations for the integrated 5-year work plan. So some revenue assumption highlights. Currently our property tax certification is about $42.1 million. The new construction roll available to us is equivalent to $2 million. I got the early number last week. From the assessor's office, we're looking at over $3 billion in new assessed value this year. And the 3% allowable increase is $1.3 million.
Commissioners, this would be one of those very important points that you might want to have a discussion on regarding direction or decision for our team.
The district also has a foregone available balance of $10.1 million. Sales tax, we are assuming a 3% increase per year. That's an analytical forecast based on historical information. House Bill 362 is still currently in the Senate. This is the one where we will be utilizing anything above $80 million. They're going to do a shift from 1% to 4.5% in sales tax over to transportation, the first 80 million going to ITD, and the remainder going to local jurisdictions. So with the local jurisdictions, they're anticipating about $4 million for the first year, which with the 18% that ACHD receives, it's about $720,000. Next year being 1.4 million, assuming that same 3% increase per year compounding. Any questions, comments?
In other words, we're not expecting much from that for a while.
Right. In 3 to 5 years, I think we're up to $4-ish million, if I remember correctly. But it depends on that base and how quickly that grows.
Depends on growth and spending habits and everything
Right,
else.
right. Because the first 80 million straight goes to ITD. And then anything above and beyond that is allocated out to the local jurisdictions.
Okay.
So the 720,000 is in addition to what we already have allocated through.
Correct, yes.
Yes. What's the current amount we currently get? It's somewhere around 2, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 2.5-ish.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Mr. President, if I can, and Commissioner Hanson on that point, the number you were referring to, Commissioner Hanson, goes right through this sales tax distribution formula. This money goes through a different statute, and it goes through the 709 distribution, which is the highway distribution account, which isn't sales tax in terms of our limitations on how to use it.
So by taking sales tax money, the 2.5 million that currently goes doesn't have the restrictions.
It has no restriction.
No restrictions, but this 750 would, even though it's sales tax, basically kind of the property tax type restrictions that are imposed would then be
It goes through the
attached.
709 highway distribution account. The
Fuel tax.
construction, reconstruction, it's the fuel tax.
Right, it's
and
fuel
all
tax
that.
limitations. Okay.
I did see a bill pop up this morning where they're going to dedicate another 40 million to make sure that they have the 80 million, so that our percentage increase in 2022 could be more.
Right, but the restrictions, I mean, that's the thing that concerns us the most is when money comes with lots of strings.
Yeah, well, all of it does except for the sales tax.
Yeah, sales tax, yeah.
And there was an effort this year to limit that to the special purpose government, and we were able to get the chairman to hold that in his desk.
Thank you.
I have one question. Before we move on from this slide, back up to the top portion where it says foregone available 10.1 million. What is that referring to?
So that refers to any time prior to 2019, anytime the district elected to not take any of the allowable increase, either the new construction roll value or the 3% allowable, that went into a foregone balance. So it's increases that could have been taken to the certification that then weren't.
Okay, so that's just saying that's water under the bridge. That's money we could have had but elected
We
not
can
to
still
take.
go back and take that. Yep, we can still add that $10.1 million to our certification.
And actually, I think the director would like to explain what that 10 million would do if taken.
Mr. President, excuse me, Commissioner McKinney, again, as Christina laid out, these were opportunities that the commission in the past elected not to execute. Sales tax, new construction, whatever, all great reasons, but they elected not to do that. That goes into currently, under current legislation here in the state, that goes into an opportunity for those taxing districts to go back, foregone, and reach back and pull back a portion or all of it for projects going forward. I'm sure Steve will make sure that I'm on the straight and narrow on this. So you have that opportunity to go back and say, well, we believe based on upcoming issues that we are going to need extra dollars. Therefore, if you elect to take the foregone, which is there's a lot of hot buttons on this, I just caution you right now, that number of dollars will come to the district every year going forward. So if you elect to say, I have a foregone balance of 10.1, we believe we need an extra 5 million per year in front of them, then you can go back and make that recommendation, make that decision. That then comes to the district. From that point going forward, your balance then would be 5.1 million that you could still go back and get more for. Now, one of the things that will be facing the district in the near future, what we've looked at is mega projects. Hugely expensive, huge big projects. Let me give you 2 examples. Just as examples, nothing that we are recommending. Number one, the city of Cuna continues to look hard for an overpass to put together their emergency responders, that sort of stuff. The estimate on that project, if I'm not mistaken, was $30 million to make that happen. The city of Meridian, as you well know, is looking hard, and I believe they've dedicated dollars now to build or construct the Linder overpass. Our estimate on that total is about between $20 and $22 million, if memory serves me right. It's an ITD project. The bridge costs $5 million. Everything else costs the extra amount. So the thought is that if the commission wants to look at that, this could potentially be set up as an enterprise fund where you take those dollars and over time you're then able to purchase or build that structure, build this other thing, maybe connect another 2 rivers overpass, whatever the things that you believe are there. The Linder Bridge projects that we're looking at here in the next couple of years, incredibly expensive dollars. So this has been looked at in the past as an opportunity to, again, set up that enterprise fund that over time provides you an opportunity to build those things without dramatically impacting the rest of the Ada County Highway District budget. Now, I will say this, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, this is highly charged on whether you do or not. There's current legislation that was submitted yesterday to limit government opportunities to go back to a certain, I think it was 7 or 8% total and such. I believe it did pass the House, and it's on its way. It did pass the Senate committee. Not yet? It's in the committee yet. And so I'm not giving you you should do this or another. I'm just giving you the facts, is that that opportunity may be gone and such. But the same token, that is a direct, if you elect to do that, that's an impact on property taxes, which, as you know, is not a very popular discussion item right now. But we believe that, again, full facts on the table, that is an opportunity, if the commission wishes to take it, to look at the mega projects that, quite frankly, we will not be able to do within the near future or the immediate future, unless there's a dedicated funding source that makes this happen, and that might be one. That's it. Those are the facts.
So this foregone amount is a property tax amount. That's where the funds
Yes.
come from.
Mhm.
Okay. And what's the mechanism? I mean, you warn about the hot button concerns and issues. What's involved in that? Does it increase the levy rate? What does it do?
It increases our base, because we never took any base increases for a number of years.
That's exactly correct. It is a hot button issue, and staff hopes you take it, because this gets into our general revenue and our impact fee issues that have happened over time. But having said that, in full disclosure, Ada County did it a couple of years ago for jail, and a lot of the property tax legislation up there this year in terms of property tax relief has to do with local governments going for all the property tax that they can. And so it's a political hot issue, but at the same time, and I've done a presentation to you in the past, and that is that of all the funding sources that for our general revenue that we get, we have very little control over our destiny in terms of revenue, except for property tax, highway distribution account, impact fee, those kind of, the other ones, the
Registration fees.
registration fees and all of that. those are all controlled by the state, the highway distribution account, the gas tax, registration fees. And I have a breakout of whether the legislature has control over our revenue, but property tax is the only one that we actually can control our destiny. Our levy rate is extremely low compared to what the statute allows over time. And we can get into, the discussion about doing special elections and all that kind of stuff. But the real test is, what does the foregone do to a $300,000 home in terms of additional cost? And it's a very minimal number.
I'd like to know,
Are
what
there
is that number?
I'll
Are there
tell
still
you.
$300,000 homes left in this valley?
It
Well,
would
we-
increase your
We can up,
taxes
we
by
can up the
the,
median on that,
Yeah,
but
the
yes.
rates are so
it
high.
would increase your taxes by about the amount of a lunch.
Yeah. One year we figured it was about the cost of a latte, but the foregone might be a larger number, but it won't be much. So
Yeah, I'd like to know the ballpark
we
for
can-
that number.
we can get that for you.
I have a couple questions. So is the 10 million a year, or is it just this lump sum, and then what would be moving
On the
forward?
base.
It would be a year, okay.
Yeah.
And then,
It's basically a clawback provision in the statute where you go back and grab the money that you walked away from. And they're making it much tougher every year.
how much of this foregone that's available, how much of it is from not taking new construction? Do we have that dollar amount?
We could get that calculation. I don't know offhand.
Okay.
I would remind the commission that as we've had discussions just the past few months, and as we've had many discussions over the past few years that I've been here, and certainly before that, while Jim was here, we have mentioned more than once that if we knew what the effect long-term was going to be of not taking those taxes when we did, and by not taking or seeing what the future was, which is the growth that we're experiencing right now, and the fact that we're approximately 15 years behind on most of our plans as a result, and because of the fact that the cost of construction has virtually doubled or tripled for many of the products and projects that we have going forward now as opposed to what they were just a couple of years ago, we need a base increase that we can control. We've been trying for years now to get the legislature to give us just a little bit more control over how efficiently we can handle the dollars that we've already been allowed to collect and give. And I'm specifically in terms of our impact fees. And we get very little, if anywhere, with them. It's up to us. Many of you have mentioned more than once that how are we going to dig our way out of this? The public screams at us every day, over the phone, in emails, in person, at the grocery store, everywhere else, that we're not doing our job. We've talked and joked about the amount of impact that the new construction roll and 3% would have on our budget, on our personal budgets at home. And we've joked about the cost of a latte. Well, that's pretty, $4, $5, $6. Adding the foregone to it, it might increase your property taxes that go to ACHD by the amount of the lunch that day. I'm sorry, but when I talk to even my most tax-averse friends, including those in the legislature that are thumping their Bibles or whatever about how immoral and everything else property taxes are, they will say that ACHD does a wonderful job with the budgets that we have and the monies that we receive from whatever source. But we still don't get any help. And I'm happy to say that. So now we can help ourselves by taking the foregone and increasing our base by that much going forward, and by responsibly dedicating those funds to, as the director described, an enterprise fund, so that we can decide when and how those monies are spent. Now, the director mentioned CUNA. I'll tell you what the CUNA deal really is. The CUNA deal is that about 70 some odd percent of their population every day comes to Boise or Meridian or somewhere else to work. If they had the overpass into their own enterprise zone or urban renewal district and industrial areas, they would immediately not get so many thumbs down, turn down from large businesses that would otherwise have wanted to be in CUNA to create good paying jobs that would keep CUNA residents there at home, working in their area much more than they do now. They'd be working in manufacturing instead of at McDonald's, and a lot of other similar type analogies could be made. That's just the one project. Of course, it's our share of the project going over the interstate at Linder's, about $16.5 million. The projects over the Boise River on Linder total about $40 million. And it goes on and on and on. These five take most of the heat for not getting stuff done. I'm sick of it. I understand how little this is going to impact my budget at home, my wife's budget, and we don't make very much money. I would like to see us go ahead and catch up for the things that we haven't done the last 15 years because of the fact that we deferred or eliminated the opportunities to take that revenue then when we could have spent it way before inflation ate our lunch, so to speak. That's all I have to
Mr.
say.
President?
Yes.
Mr. President, referencing the property tax bill that's being fast-tracked through the legislature right now, it did pass the House, as was mentioned. It did come out of the Senate committee with a do-pass 6-3 vote, so now it's will be going on to the Senate body for a vote. There is a hard cap of that 8% on how much the local budgets can increase. Then if you do a little bit deeper dive, and it's all pretty new, so I haven't been able to do that, but should it pass the Senate, there are a few more constraints surrounding the foregone as to what projects you can use the funding for, a limit on the amount that you can take. So if it does pass through the Senate, the sooner staff can do a deep dive on that and get back to us exactly what type of percentages we would be looking at would be really helpful as we move forward on setting our priorities.
And the bad news is that the same guys that sponsored those bills want to eliminate the opportunity for foregone altogether.
Yeah.
So,
So maybe we'll have a little bit more information this afternoon, but I did want to, I just found out about the constraints on the foregone, should you elect to do that. But there is that hard cap of 8%, so I just wanted to share that.
Mary, do you know what are those constraints at all?
There's a list in there of the different projects. I'm sure Stacy probably has a copy of the bill, but I haven't been able to really do a deep dive. It just kind of jumped off the page. So I think we'd be looking at a few more constraints there. So it's important for us to have that information before we move forward with our breakdown.
If, let me ask another question then. If this proposed legislation that the legislature is considering at the moment, if that were to pass, it would affect the budget that we're talking about, wouldn't it?
absolutely.
So that even if, regardless of what decisions we might make, it could inhibit us in making other decisions.
We would not be inhibited. If we make some decisions today under existing laws, we're not going to get our teeth kicked out by whatever they do.
Well, if I can.
Is that correct?
Mr. President, it will, because everything right now has an emergency clause in it, and the new law would apply. But what we publish it most certainly will know the rule of engagement by August 1, which is the important date for publication. And again, the commission can, on revenue, you can always reduce revenue at the budget hearing on August 25th.
Yes.
So if we include all of it, even with the new law and foregone, the commission always has the leeway on that date after a public hearing to reduce it. So you'll know more in a couple of weeks on what the new law is and when it takes effect.
But if the commission made a decision today regarding that, legislation that passes next week would not affect it?
No.
Not really.
Oh,
What it
yes,
does is it prepares staff to start going in the direction of making assumptions about revenue. But they won't do that until we know what's going to happen with the new law.
Yeah.
But it starts them to, what's happening today is you're really giving staff guidance on which direction to go with the budget and preparing it so that we can come back for public comment. That's what's happening today. You're not making any hard and fast decisions about that are going to be binding upon you about what's going to happen in the budget or the integrated 5-year work plan.
And what you're also,
It's giving us guidance to start preparing to give you a picture based upon those assumptions for you to consider on what you want to adopt.
Steve, can you explain a little bit what you mean by like August? What's in August?
Well, that's the date that we are going to, we're required by statute to adopt a budget.
Okay.
And we have to publish that, I think this year, the last date is August 4th, that we have to publish it. And that statute says that your budget's basically set in terms of your expenditures. In terms of your revenue, you still can reduce your revenue on the hearing, the budget hearing, which is scheduled for August 25th. You can't increase your revenue at that hearing. You can only reduce it. Once you publish a total amount, then you can only reduce it.
Only related to property tax.
Only related to property tax.
Property
yeah, and if we have to reduce it based on new legislation, then we have to reduce it based on new legislation. But,
Like I said, we're going to know
yeah.
due order shortly.
But also, I would
Mr.
remind the
President-
commission to remember how often, and I can guarantee you something's going to happen by this afternoon. If we go ahead and say, okay, let's include these 3 items in our budgeting process for at least the next few weeks, we're going to get some people saying, oh, no, don't do that. We'll do something for you next year. Next year. How many next years have you all heard? Every year. I just assume take care of ourselves. Mary, go ahead.
Mr. President, I just have a question. What would be our budget growth rate then with this hard cap of 8%, irregardless of the foregone constraints that are part of this bill? Where would we be concerning that hard cap of 8%? With our 3%, the new construction, and then to take all of the foregone, what's that budget growth rate?
Mr. President, Commissioner, if we did just the new construction rule and the allowable 3%, that is 8%. If I add in, I can't do this math in my head, contrary to popular belief. That's about a 30% increase.
So
13
I
million
think we're,
divided
like you
by-
said, Commissioner Goldthorpe, we're going to hear something. We're going to know if the Senate's going to hear this, if it's going to move forward. We're going to have more information. I would like to have a little bit more information so we know what type of percentage we're looking at before we instruct staff to go ahead and put all this, start working this amount of money into our budget. Because with a hard cap of 8%, I'm not sure. And I understand where you're coming from. I just wanted to throw that out there that there are some constraints here. And then with the hard cap of 8%, we need to look at where our budget growth rate will be, because if we have them start working this budget and include all of the foregone in there, that might not be the best way to spend their time right now.
If we include the foregone, what we had anticipated suggesting that we do with the foregone was that would not impact our budget this year. That would be deposited into an enterprise fund for future projects, large projects. So it wouldn't impact the budget that we're going to be spending next year.
Do that.
Mr. President, Commissioners, as we said, we'll know by the end of this week as to what the status of this is, and then as confirmed with the General Counsel, what we won't know is whether or not the governor will sign it or not. There's some interesting dynamics that are going on as you all know right now, but we'll have a pretty good idea that we can come back either over email or whatever and say, here's what we know today. And as you know, our lobbyists are out there every day providing us a daily update on things that are going on, but we'll be able to give you a pretty good idea. If not this afternoon, probably tomorrow.
Okay, that's a good idea, good news, but again, I would probably not change a word that I've said so far today, because as Christine said, the new construction and 3% would hit the 8% right there. And so if the folks down there in Boise sitting around trying to determine whether or not we get what we get to do or how many strings to put on anything we get, if they have their way, that foregone will disappear with that 8% cap.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I just have a lot of questions around this enterprise fund. I think I would need a lot more information about how we would be spending that money, what we're able to spend that money on, and just the mechanism to create
It
that.
would be anything that we could spend general revenue monies on. And what we're anticipating right now are only those projects that are huge, like that, the overpass in Cuna, the overpass over the interstate, the bridges and expansion, whether it's 5 lanes or whatever on Linder at the Boise River. Those are, the way we're growing in Ada County, these things have to occur. Now, what we're going to wind up doing, if we don't utilize the foregone, and if the legislature goes to an 8% cap, in order to make those bigger projects occur, we probably have to cut way back on some of our other projects.
Mr. President, what I'd like to propose is we'll get answers to all those questions and come back to you on the property tax, the new legislation, what, if any, limitations there are on the 8% in terms of whether it needs to be on capital projects or what. We can come back to you once some of the dust settles, and we'll provide you that information. We'll also give you some of the information that you've already requested. We'll make sure that we address that.
Okay. Is there any
Mr. President,
reason? Go ahead.
I just want to make sure, to Alexis's point about the enterprise fund, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that and the wherewithals, and if that is something that we can actually do if this new legislation passes. I just want to make sure we're marching forward, and I don't want to have one assumption and then have to jerk back and then change everything. I think we're going to know here probably by the end of the day which way this is going. But there are a lot of constraints in there. A lot of the projects you mentioned, I think they would fall under that, but there's a limit as to what percentage of the foregone can be applied to those projects. So I think it's just being smart to find out exactly what those limitations are.
Would we be able to put 100% of the foregone if we wanted to into that enterprise fund, Steve? I mean, what, is there already a bunch of strings to using foregone?
Under the new law, I'm not sure.
Oh, no, I mean under the old law.
Under the old law, no, it was, you could use it for the same purposes as property tax, which was limited to the construction, reconstruction, and maintenance of roads.
That's what I thought. Okay, thanks. So we don't have to decide anything about this today as far as the new construction, the 3%, or would you like an idea from the commission as to where to head with your budget development?
Mr. President, I just wanted to clarify one thing. With the foregone, you do have to adopt a resolution stating what you are going to use the foregone for, and that resolution can be adopted the same night as the public hearing. So you do have to state what it's for, but then the spending parameters are the same as what Steve had mentioned.
Okay.
I would love some direction on building a budget.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I wasn't sure if, Christine, you were finished sort of going through things before we all dove in. And
Oh, no, you're fine. This is it's a big topic. This is usually one that's
Right.
that's ready to be talked about. I'm happy to go over in additional detail on the levy rate analysis that I do every year. Again, one of the things when we talk about it increasing by a latte, right? That's of things that we can control. That's assuming your home value remains the same from one year to the next. which we know it typically doesn't. When our levy rate decreases because of the overall market value in the valley, there's a break-even point. Some people see lower property taxes, some people see high because their property values are increasing greater than that. I can do anything mathematical. I don't make assumptions on what the overall growth on individual homes is. So when I do my analysis, I only look at assuming your property value remains the same from year to year. That being said, and I will get you the number on what amount was new construction roll that we haven't taken in the past. So one of the things with new construction roll is, again, assuming all things equal from year to year, if you increase the property tax certification, which is the amount that we receive, and by the equitable amount that they are increasing the net market value by, your levy rate ultimately doesn't change because the new construction roll is being added on at the same rate that that new market value is.
Great.
We don't set our levy rate. I just want to make that clear. Okay.
So I'd like the commission to give Christine the benefit of a little bit of grace from us as to whether or not she should proceed with not the foregone, because we've got time to decide on that, but whether or not for her to be able to use the 3% and the new construction.
So, Mr. President, Christine, what is the amount that we have to spend as a match when we spend impact fees? What is that amount in this year? And can we project that out in future years? Because we have to basically take a portion of our general fund, which isn't restricted or is restricted to law. But when we spend the impact fee money, we have to match it. Do you know what that amount is?
I don't have that dollar amount specifically right now. Do you have it broken out in your presentation? We can get a projection for you. Each project is different. It depends on what the existing lane and what the final lane configuration is.
Yeah, I'd love to see the amounts in each of the last, this fiscal year and then previous fiscal year, so the cumulative.
Ooh.
So what? I don't know if that's that too complicated, because the concern I have is that we have bumped up against flaws in the impact fee statute. We go to the legislature to ask them to address these flaws, and they don't. And so I think what we need to do is to cap what automatically goes over as these matches, because that ties up those funds. And so if we're going to maintain some level of flexibility, that we should basically cap the amount at a certain level. But I don't know what that level is, because a certain amount is spent every year that we can't spend on things that we've identified as critical needs, so because they have to be set aside and matched what we're saying is being raised through impact fees.
Yeah, President Goldthorpe, Commissioner Hanson, if you'd like, I can attempt to answer the question about the amount. For the record, my name is Justin Lucas. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Project Management here at the Highway District. As Christine stated, the amount changes every year, and it also changes, it is project dependent on how much general fund revenue has to be put into a project to match. It's not a dollar for dollar match. It's a contribution from the general fund into a project to make it whole, to include all those elements that you want to include in the project that are not impact fee eligible. It's about $10 to $15 million a year, ultimately, that is coming from the general fund into the capital budget to support those capital projects that require a contribution to match the impact fees. So we'll get you the details, but I wanted to give you a ballpark of about how much it is annually that we have to bring from the general fund into the impact fee eligible project program.
Right. So Steve wanted to add some legalese.
No. Just monkey ease. The other issue is that you've seen is the way that the impact fee program is obviously set up over 20 years. it was set up where it was general revenue dependent early in the program until the impact fee started generating. And now we're at the life cycle where the impact fee revenue, now we have positive balance of impact fee revenue. And part of that reason is not just our ability to get those projects done, but it's also because we don't have sufficient general revenue to be able to pay to have the existing deficiencies associated with those impact fee projects. So you're going to start seeing, and Justin and his team have done a great job with the strategic plan that show a graph that shows, when there's that point, and you've seen it before, where the general revenue goes down and the impact fee and our ability to deliver those capital projects. So we can provide
that's
that
my
information.
concern, and I'd like the commission to consider, rather than just simply going on and allowing that to continue to grow, that we actually put a cap on it, which would then put a cap on the ability to use impact fees until there's some flexibility, some greater use. Because right now, the description of impact fee eligibility is really narrow. We didn't anticipate that, 30 years ago when the impact fee statute was written. But now we no longer have to loan money, we're actually building up money. And so there's a huge pressure to spend the impact fees, which means we have to spend some of the general fund, and that will continue to grow. My concern is that's going to eat up a sizable portion of what we might raise. And so I'd like us to consider a cap on that. I realize that may mean, because that impact fee loan balance is growing, not loan balance, the impact fee balance is growing, that we might have to reduce impact fees until the legislature actually changes the law to allow us to spend it on those things that are basically caused by growth impacts. But we haven't had to confront this issue, but we will from a budgetary standpoint, because if we continue to have more money, we have to spend. We have to spend the impact fee. If we've collected it, we said we're going to spend it, we have to spend it. We have to then spend a portion of general revenue. I think we should start capping that until we get the law changed, because we don't have much flexibility in the way the law is written, as we've seen, and the flexibility keeps going down. But we at least can cap that and then say, oh, well, the net effect may be that, some projects they're not projects yet, but it will impact how we spend impact fee money. So I'd like to see us, and I'd like that to deal with that this year, because we can project that. And I have been reluctant to take the 3%. I've been reluctant to take new construction. I'm reluctant to take foregone for that very reason, because I've been seeing the growth in the amount of obligation that we incur. Because once we build it, we still have to maintain it, and the amount of sort of like a sucking sound that has for general revenue. And I just don't like that sucking sound that on general revenue for something that we have asked the legislature to help us deal with, and we haven't gotten that. So that would be a critical condition, is a cap on the general revenue match for impact fee eligible projects. That is really important. The other is we have to have some sort of measurement to determine, because we're so dependent on property. Some of our projects really do, and frankly, fixing largely helps ensure the property values are maintained. It's a basic, very fiscally prudent way of, if we can do something about maintaining our assets, then the revenue from those properties, I know property values are going up right now, but what you want to do is preserve the value of those assets, and the value of those assets are adjacent to sidewalks and bikeways and roadways and crossings and so forth. And we have a long list of to-dos. And what happens is when we invest in those, then private enterprise invests. And so, but we don't measure that so that we can help prioritize what's going to help preserve our assets. I think that's the most prudent thing to do. I'm not sure exactly how you do that, but because we're so dependent on property taxes, you understand what I'm saying, Christine? So,
Nope.
Nope.
Jim, I got a question.
so here's an example.
Okay.
Here's an example. So roadways, there's 3 roadways that are deteriorating, okay? And we can only fix one of them right now. One of them goes by a bunch of brownfields. There's very little value there. But another one goes by areas that are close to declining, and businesses might not hold on because people can't access it very well. And another is actually thriving, doing great. Well, we can come up with there should be some way of measuring. If we improved roadway A or roadway B or roadway C, what kind of investment could we anticipate? Maybe this one over here in C, they're already investing. And so it's only a teeny incremental. Maybe over here in A, there's no way. There's so many other things, infrastructure issues that have to be dealt with. But here in B, if we were to provide some infrastructure and spend the money here, that would precipitate investment both by the public and the private sector that increases and enhances those values. It might turn into, instead of a couple of rundown shops and houses, actually sort of multifamily, an activity center, so that the taxable value and the activity enhances. Well, we're a property tax dependent agency, just as the cities and the schools are. And so if we were to, but we can't measure that. So in other words, this road looks like this road, looks like this road, doesn't matter. Well, this one got in the road in the way, in line first, so we'll just fix this one. And instead of thinking, the return on investment is actually going to be greater maybe in B. It's a basic sort of a concept of what is our asset, what is our revenue source, which is mostly property. How do we make sure that our investments help to return value? And I know that is not something we do yet, but it's something we should do, and I think other cities do it, to try and figure out in terms of prioritizing, because we now have 5,000 some center lane miles of roadways. We can't fix and repair and make safe and make sure they're carrying as many people as possible all at once. So that is something I'd like to see us move towards, saying this helps to triage how we're going to do that. So that's a concept. It's a sort of economic concept. If we had that tool in our toolbox, we could say, this is where, and it's not a straight line, but it does tell us, and it forces us to work with the private sector and other agencies to say, if we invest in here, what's the estimated return on this investment? Does that make sense?
2 things, Jim. When we were starting to talk about the enterprise fund, and I mentioned what some of the projects were that this might be utilized for, 2 of them jump all over, just jump up and shout economic development. So we can do that.
Yeah. I like this.
Other question I have is, what in the world gives you any idea whatsoever that the legislature would be in any way, shape, or form interested in helping us with the impact fees? I see nothing, and I've spoken to them face to face. I've started a campaign with some of the folks in the legislature that I think have the biggest axe to grind against Ada County, and asking them why. Why does it appear to me that you hate Ada County? And in every single case so far, it's been met with, I don't. What are you talking about? And we've had a rather interesting discussion, all of which have resulted in very positive thoughts going forward and commitments to look at things. But then leadership hides it from them.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lose any sleep over what the legislature might or might do. There's taxing districts all over this state who've looked at that statute, said it's way too narrow, it's not going to help us, and so they don't have an impact fee program.
I talked to several of the highway districts about that, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah, they say this is not going to help us, so we're not going to use it. So why have a statute You know, and I think it was passed with a lot of good effort and good, but ultimately, if we don't fix it, it's going to become obsolete. And by that time, we'll have built out all the roads that we could possibly use under the statute. And then it's like, well, I guess we just shut down our impact fee program because we can't use it on any of the things we need to do now that we built everything out. So I think it's time that
Mr.
we
President?
look
Yes.
forward to capping our
Go ahead, Dave.
general revenue.
I think we need to keep moving on. I don't want to bog us down anymore, but let me just, before we do, let me just comment. I think in response to one of the comments Commissioner Hansen has made, I don't think it would be wise for us to cap our use of impact fees. That would be like tying our own hands. I don't think that would be a wise thing to do. I think the more prudent solution to our ability to use impact fees is to increase our general revenues so that we can use the impact fees and do other things that we need to do as well. That's the better way to go. In any case, let's keep going.
I have a question.
Okay, it's going to respond.
What are the particulars around taking new construction? So is it a set percentage? Can that percentage increase? What does that look like?
So, new construction roll amount changes every year. So I get the amount of what the new construction roll value is. For example, this year it's $3 billion. Just for example, the height of the boom in 2006, 7, and 8, it was 1.3, 1.5, and 1.7. Just to give you an example of what we're seeing right now with those increases. I get that amount, that's multiplied by our previous year's approved levy rate, that then gives me the $2.06 million.
So that rate is set in stone, so we can't,
Which rate?
is it the levy rate that tells us how much we can take, right, from new construction? Is that what you're saying? Like we don't influence that rate at all?
Not what you're multiplying the $3 billion of value by, no.
Okay.
And our levy rate changes every year because that's a calculation that's done at the State Tax Commission once we certify. So we certify an amount to be collected, and then once we turn that in, we have to submit it early in September. It goes through the assessor's office to the State Tax Commission, and they have the final amount of total market value in the valley, about $60 billion right now, and they multiply that by the amount that we've certified, how much money we want to get, and that's how you calculate our levy rate. So I don't typically get our levy rate back and approved by the state until mid-October because it goes through all of these checks. But the levy rate is a calculation based on how much we anticipate or how much we certify to receive. So property taxes is less of a fluctuating. It's not based on, just because there's more people here does not mean that we receive more in property taxes because we certify how much we want to receive.
Right.
I think I'm getting hung up on the certify how much we receive, that statement. Like what does?
I think, and I've actually personally, on a personal level, been researching property taxes lately, just because of my own interest, strange interest, but there are reasons for it. The property taxes are sort of, the levy rate is reverse engineered. All the taxing authorities submit their budgets, and then the state takes the budget requests and the revenue, or excuse me, the valuation, and back calculates what levy rate would give us that budget amount. So that's where so I have to admit, there are still some aspects of the whole budget thing that are a little bit hazy in my mind too, but forgive me.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, and Christine's done a great job to kind of give you the garden variety of, the levy rate and how it works. But to say that the levy rate set in stone is an overstatement. Mm-hmm. There are other things that can influence. You have the one issue is you have the January 1 is kind of the date in terms of property taxes. And then you have, what is it, May 30 in terms of, well, Bob McQuaid, the assessments, Bob McQuaid will be in next week.
Good.
Who will be going over all of that. And we most certainly can give the commission a refresher on property tax 201. But the statute also gives ACHD a lot. I mean, we have control over our destiny. We can affect the levy rate through other statutory mechanisms. We've never done it. It's not very popular. So to say it's set in stone, I just want to make sure that there are other things that are at play, that we do control our destiny a little bit. But in some ways, we're also a victim of our past in terms of levy rate, what we do, what we decide, what we take. The other thing is don't forget that our general revenue is not solely from property tax. We get a big chunk, and we're going to get a big chunk from 709, which is the highway distribution account. So it represents, what is it, 50-50 basically?
Yeah, pretty close.
It's pretty close. So you have other sources.
Yes.
Well, just for your clarification, Christine, like what I'm thinking of in terms of the request of the commission, like what's some direction that you'd like us to take? My mindset is, it's been similar to what, Steve had mentioned. It's been a missed opportunity from our previous commissions to not take that construction roll increase and putting the cost and burden of our growth on our residents and not having growth pay for itself. So I would be very supportive of that piece, but I would like to know more about how much of that foregone is in part of that new construction, and if there's more wiggle room so we can make that a little bit more equitable and the burden isn't on our regular property owners and homeowners.
Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, we don't get to decide on how they calculate that or how it's the same property. Every property in Ada County, if they pay Ada County Highway District property taxes, they pay the exact same levy rate.
Yes. And one of the things that you'll find out next week when we hear from Mr. McQuaid, and God bless him anyway, when he came to us last year and we talked to him about what has been done to reduce property taxes. You remember what he said, Steve? That guy has sweat and blood trying to figure out how he can personally in his office reduce property taxes. And he did incredible things the last year or two. And I think I was about the only one who publicly thanked him. So ask him that again next week when he shows up, and you'll see what a class act that guy really is.
And Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, you had asked about what I mean by certification. So we have to sign, the commission makes a motion the night of the public hearing for the president to sign our property tax certification. It's a piece of paper that says, we want you to collect $42.1 million on ACHD's behalf and through property taxes, and then we receive those twice a year from the state. So a certification, we're just saying how much we want to receive.
Got it. I think I'll be connecting with you guys offline. Thank you.
That's fine.
So I appreciate Commissioner McKinney understand the frustration of so how do we get a control of, we can control the one area of our budget but not another. If we don't put a cap on the general funds, what if we at least are a little more transparent in saying these are all the prior projects in one list instead of having a separate list? Because what you'll find is as we're dealing with the list of projects in the integrated 5-year work plan, there's this list of impact fee eligible projects that's basically already decided because we passed the capital improvements plan. And so it's over here, and then we say, and so the property taxes are going to go and cover those things. And so it's really difficult to compare. So if we can't cap them, or if we decide not to cap what comes out of general revenue, how about we just make a consistent list so the public can see, here's our priorities. Now, some of them are going to be paid for with impact fees plus general revenue. Others are going to be paid for by general revenue, which are property taxes, the fuel tax, registration fees. Some of them are eligible for those. So just at least so we can compare them. It's not necessarily in Christine's, it would be, and it sounds like, and Christy understands what the frustration is, that it feels like there's, the one thing that when you go to the public and you say, we want some input this year, by the way, there's a bunch of stuff that's off the table because we already decided that a couple of years ago. They're like, what? How come? So the more we can integrate that and say, this is how this goes, the easier we can understand why a certain percentage of our general revenue is consumed by the impact fee program, which is our called capital improvements plan, which we don't vote on every year. We only vote on that every 4 years. So the stuff that you guys are saddled with for the next 3 years, we decided last year, even though you might want to see them at least prioritized a little differently. We can go back and change some in the future years, but it's really difficult. Once we've said, okay, we're going to build this, then we charge an impact fee. We obligate to build it because we've charged an impact fee, and then we have to use general revenues to finish the rest of the aspects of that project. So that's where maybe if we take that approach, we could at least be more transparent in how that impact fee statute does impact everybody. Its limitations, the limitations of the impact fee statute hits everybody, and why so many local governments are saying, the heck with that, we don't want to have our hands tied that much. And they're not even after what, 30 years it's been on the books, there's still local governments that have not used it.
Well, being as that we're not just any other run-of-the-mill local government, and being as that, at least for this commissioner, it's a whole lot easier for me to read our lists in the 5-year work plan than having everything that's in the CIP in one list and having me try to work it out for myself. I think let's go ahead with Director Wong has something to say, and then we'd like to go through the rest of the presentation and then discuss what we're going to do about the new construction roll and the 3%.
Mr. President, thank you. Commissioners, again, I believe I've accomplished my objective. You've got to slide 2, and you've had a great discussion so far. I did want to let you know that I need to depart at this point in time. Justin Lucas will be filling in for me. I'm sure he'll let me know how much of a beating he took when it was all said and done. But I would like to make a suggestion too, and we are prepared to do this next week. It may be of benefit to go back and rebrief the commission on the strategic plan that the staff put together. It highlights a lot of these issues. It looks at options for the commission across the board, and with your concurrence, we will set that up next week for a work session so that our great projects and plan team can give you an idea of what we have looked at and what we think would be beneficial again for the commission. So with that, again, thank you. You're on slide 2. You have 44 more to go, so I wish you the best. Thank you all.
You know, even though you're being a wise guy, God bless you for what you have to face the rest of this week.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right, Mr. President, we're on to slide 3. Slide 2 is always that sticker. I should put it at the end. So some additional major revenue sources that we have is Ada County registration fees. I will just point out that currently ACHD collects $40 per vehicle for that registration that was passed in 2008. It's a 20-year that is sunsetting in 2028. So just to keep that on your horizon, that is $12 million a year that we're anticipating there. The Highway Users Fund, we do still break out House Bill 312 that took effect in 2015, I believe. This was the addition of some fuel taxes that were added on. We do track all of those. We report all those projects as well as their phases and types of projects through our road and street report annually. And then we are anticipating impact fees to be about $24 million a year through the with an annual 3% increase through the integrated 5-year work plan.
So I just have a question. So when we initiated the increase last year, we initiated an annual increase every year? Don't we have to, on the impact fee?
Those are just revenue projections based on history.
Revenue projections,
right.
so the fees aren't changing.
Correct.
Okay, I got a little confused there. I don't think we were sort of doing a continual, because it's like the more we collect in impact fees and the less things can be eligible, the bigger the gap.
Mr. President, Commissioner Hanson, I apologize for the confusion.
Thank
Yes,
you.
these are projections on the revenues.
And as you also know, that Gary Enselman and his team, when we do an impact fee update with our CIP update, if there's any increases in that, that's usually because of project costs. But it does increase every year because there is a cost of living adjustment.
There is a COLA.
That's automatic, so.
And what's
Yes.
the COLA?
Oh, it's the Rocky Mountain.
Oh, it's this region?
Yeah.
It's been about 1.5%,
Yeah.
I think,
Based on
historically.
eggs, butter, things like that.
CPI.
CPI.
Okay. Question about the fuel taxes, because we've asked this in the past, and we've been tracking it. Given the number of vehicles and the state's inability to figure out the transition that is happening of the number of people purchasing and using electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. And so the gas companies are raising gas taxes to make up for that shift. Is there some better data this year that can project out how much is coming from fuel? And the legislature still can't figure out how to deal with it on non-gas powered, and really what powers your car is irrelevant to the impact you have on the road or how much you use the road. And so moving towards vehicle miles traveled is just like a no-brainer, but they can't figure out how to do it. So ultimately, they're probably going to get in a hole. I don't know. Have we projected out? I assume it's been remained steady because as the vehicles drop off of use, the rate, the amount that gas companies are charging goes up. So then the taxes are based on the percentage of what they charge.
Mr. President, Commissioner Hanson, that's not a number we track. We don't track the 709. The state financial management office, I'm sure we could get some data from that. The issue of other means of transportation, mostly electronic vehicles, there was a proposal up there to require them to pay, more and all of that. It didn't go anywhere, but I'm sure through that, somebody had some data that is tracking with what you're talking about, and we can look into it for you.
Yeah, just as the principal entity that maintains the roads, the vehicles, that everything uses, that it's like, well, it's supposed to be a user-based fee. It should be based on how much someone uses it. So it just doesn't make sense. But again, how long the legislature will take to figure that out, I don't know.
Some additional revenue sources that we have are our fees and services. Majority of these fees do, are attributed to the Development and Technical Services Division. They're plat review fees, zone and inspection fees, street and profile fees. The street name signs, those are signs that developers buy from us. So on the operational side, there is a line item in our operational budget where they buy those signs from us for their subdivisions that are coming, as well as various license agreements and street vacation fees. It's about $4 million a year for these grouped
Christine,
items.
is the rental properties that we are renting out or something else? Okay.
And if I can, most of this revenue is really a revenue or a cost recovery for our costs. And under state law, we can't charge any more than what our actual costs are. So this is really us just the services that we provide and our ability to, through our staff and their time and expenses, all of that, this is really just a recovery.
Commissioner Pickering, did you get your question answered on rental property?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Some of the other revenue sources, these are fairly small amounts. Interest, this has to do with, we do have our cash balance invested with the state pool to, I think it's, and we do 6 and 3 month, I think, 3 and 6 month investments with those to receive various interest amounts. Service reimbursement has to do with restitution payments for damages done to our facilities. If we have to go and repair a cabinet due to a car accident or whatever, those payments all go in there. Equipment disposal and property disposal. The equipment disposal, I think the list is coming before the commission. We have a plan to go out to an auction mid-May. I guess we're in May. In the next few weeks. As we get new vehicles, we have our vehicle replacement plan. We send those vehicles out, and then that's the revenue that comes in from selling those. Property disposal has to do with properties that we've purchased for projects. If we end up purchasing an entire parcel, let's say, and we utilize what we need, we sell back and get back on the property tax roll that remainder process. I don't know if we've had any this year that you guys have been a part of. On the federal aid and cost share side, most of these are project-related reimbursements. If the city of Meridian is going to be replacing their water and sewer at the time that we're doing our road project, we will bid their project with ours, and then it's just a pass-through. They reimburse us for all of those actual expenses. On the federal aid side, that works for our federal capital maintenance projects. We do have cost share reimbursement for our NPDES co-permittees, as well as signal maintenance and costs from ITD that's recouped through an agreement that we have with them. Just some additional considerations in the for FY 22-23 budget. We do have the resolution 2328 with potential community program bid savings. Again, this is not a hard and fast number. The resolution states that it'll be finalized as FY 2021 projects are closed out. And as you know, right now is our big time when we're in the middle of construction, so we're not anticipating a lot of those projects to be completed until August and September. House Bill 308 is one-time funding from the State General Fund. We did receive that in April. We have the impact fee program balance that's been spoken about, as well as some reservation funding we can work through.
Christine, I just wanted to ask Steve when he wanted to make the presentation about the 2328.
Let her get through a couple more slides.
Okay.
And Christine, I have a other question. So the whole House Bill 308 got me thinking, do we have any idea with, I know that there's some big federal transportation bills looming and spending pieces. So are we considering or looking at what are those types of dollars to expect for us and how that would impact our budget?
That, Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, that's a great question. We don't know a lot about it. Obviously, those federal funds are for infrastructure. The details of that are not out. In fact, the state legislature is, contemplating. They have to be back by September 1, really to address that federal funding issue and how they're going to get those funds and what they're going to utilize. But Tom Furch, not here, our federal guy, he is watching that like a hawk. And as we get more details, we'll be coming to the commission. But we'll be working with Compass and BRT to the extent that we can and try and leverage as much as we can.
Thank you.
On the operational side, again, operational budgets were submitted the end of last week, so I'm just in an early review of those. There's still a lot of questions, a lot of things that we're waiting on as far as on the labor side, what we're looking to assume there. Operational costs estimated to increase with additional staff, miles, requirements, and equipment. I think that we know that we'll see those operational costs increase. Right now, it's just we're just really early in the process. Next steps. So July 7th is the first of our 2 longer work sessions. We go over revenue and operational budget work session on July 7th, and that is the one where we'll go through it page by page on both the revenue side as well as the operational side. On July 14th, I will be doing it in conjunction with Christy again with the integrated 5-year work plan. Since the first 2 years of the budget since the 2 years of the budget are the first 2 years of the integrated 5-year work plan, they coincide well together. August 4th, we have the opportunity for a final review before I send the information out to publication. And then on August 25th, we will have the public hearing. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Oh, we're all
I didn't
sitting
even
down.
get to say that.
I'll say thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Very much.
My pleasure.
Take it away, Christy.
Can you right click?
Can you hear me okay when I speak? Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. That's that one.
Commissioners, while she's doing that, based upon some of the discussions today, we'll be no doubt coming back to you with some work sessions to provide some clarity on some of these issues. And they'll be working with you, Mr. President, on doing that, budget related, revenue related, some of the different costs. So don't think that it's just going to, July 7th is going to show up and we're not going to be talking about it. We'll be creating a program leading up to that where we can answer a lot of those questions and provide you additional information and clarity on some of the issues that you've raised.
Thanks.
Fine over here.
We've only lost 2 people from our crowd of participants, so we're doing okay.
Oh.
Goodness gracious.
Work through it. Good job.
Planning and programming. By now, this last.
Turn your mic on.
Yeah. Commissioner May, can you hear Christy well enough?
No, she was breaking up there.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
This is where we're currently at in the process for the annual update to the integrated 5-year work plan and where we're headed. Today's presentation is on the budget, revenue, and early considerations, which will be the 5th presentation with the commission, and we'll come back to the commission in July with the initial draft. The purpose of today's presentation is to review with the commission early considerations for the development of the integrated 5-year work plan. They include planning and execution, shelf project strategy, implementing the commission directives, comprehensive project strategy, and spending targets. So there's been a shift in the percentage of operational costs versus capital costs. The challenge we're facing is current staffing levels cannot meet the growing project demands. This means we currently don't have the capacity to implement the capital budget. What this means is we have to find the right balance. For our operational and capital programming, it means increasing our operational capacity. It means balancing our maintenance and project enhancements and impacts they have on programming. It means we need to adjust to the rapid growth that is occurring in the Valley by building projects for now and in the future. We do want to take an opportunity to thank the Commission for their support for providing another project team to keep up with these growing demands. We also thought it was a good time to discuss the impacts of the new ACHD facilities to the programming efforts. For the development of the Franklin Yard site, the cost is approximately $2.4 million spread out over 3 years. For the development of the Eustic Yard site, the cost is approximately $24.4 million spread out over 7 years. In all, this means over $36 million over the course of the integrated 5-year work plan. So one way we'll address the growing needs in the county is to develop a shelf project strategy. A shelf project strategy is increasing the number of design projects that will be in the plan. This will give us a bank of designed projects or a shelf project. By having projects that are shovel ready, it gives us the ability to be flexible to changing conditions, such as the $8.5 million we received. This would include the ability to spend additional funding that may come our way, or the ability to pull another project forward to construction if another project happens to get delayed for any reason. You'll see the implementation of this strategy with the upcoming draft of the plan, which will include a certain amount of over-programming, especially in the out years. Another discussion item is the implementation of the commission directives by creating a comprehensive project strategy. That means we're going in once in an area. The objective is to look at projects, corridors, and neighborhoods more holistically. This includes completing critical connections, updating driveways and ADA ramps with our maintenance strategy. We also have our bulb out strategy to include with other projects, and completing our bikeway networks, etc. With this strategy, it'll take longer to complete a project and cost more to complete. For example, with maintenance projects, there'll be design elements and possible right-of-way acquisition. Federal aid projects carry environmental requirements, and the funding of those projects can't move and will require additional local funds to complete with this strategy. This means we will need to enhance our programming approach to include realistic project timelines. Again, they're going to take longer to complete. Increase our operational capacity to accomplish more projects, and increase funding.
Mr. President, Christy, before you go on, what proportion of our projects actually include federal aid?
I do not have that percentage. Justin, do you know what that is?
Ballpark, approximately what level of federal funding do we get for projects?
President Goldthorpe, Commissioner McKinney, so our capital budget hovers at around $60 million a year. Of that $60 million, approximately $8 to $10 million is federal aid projects. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we have focused those dollars into our maintenance program almost exclusively. So these projects are mill and inlay projects, ADA, kind of improvements to the existing infrastructure,
Okay.
and upgrades to existing infrastructure, and not enhancements or capital, major, intersection and roadway projects. We've done a lot of both over the years. We have found that focusing those federal dollars on the maintenance projects is a more efficient way to spend those dollars.
Okay, great, thank you.
Follow-up, we've, over the time, in just kind of follow up what he said, and that is that it's a really a revenue allocation strategy. Federal dollars, if you use them for capital projects, they're a lot longer. You better get about 60 cents on the dollar, and when you get into capital maintenance, you get about $1 for dollar. So that's been the strategy, is really to allocate those that frees up our local dollars to where we have more flexibility with our capital projects. And that's something that's been very effective in the last 10 years.
Good, thank you.
As we get into the programming, it's important to review with the commission-directed capital allocation methodology, and get clear direction from the commission on both the methodology and targets. The first component of the ACHG's programming obligations are those items that we have to do and are not discretionary. They include ADA and environmental compliance obligations, which are critical programming compliance items that are integrated into every ACHG project. The vehicle registration fee ballot commitments, otherwise known as VRF projects, which we're obligated to use for safe routes to school and congestion relief. The last obligation is general fund support to impact fee collections. ACHD cannot expend impact fees without allocating general funds for the non-impact fee eligible portion of a project, as we've talked about earlier. Just as an example, if a roadway improvement project is 82% impact fee eligible, ACHD is required to allocate general funds for the remaining 18%. It's not a dollar for dollar match. And in most cases, intersection improvement projects are 100% impact fee eligible. Currently, the impact fee program balance is $3.5 million. In a nutshell, we're taking in more than we're spending right now. After the programming obligations, the Commission's methodology identifies the primary focus is safety and maintenance. These include signals, crossings, and safety projects with documented needs, as well as our asset management, which is maintaining our existing infrastructure. This includes our capital maintenance and bridges program. Then comes the secondary focus items, which are system enhancements. These include projects identified through the adopted neighborhood plans, the bike master plan, and community projects that are not funded through VRF. And then we have the non-impact fee eligible capital improvement plan projects. So this is our current capital allocation methodology. This is a breakdown of the programming targets of each of the capital allocation methodology groupings. The targets set the funding goals for the multitude of projects within the integrated 5-year work plan. Commission reviews the funding targets through the annual update, which we originally brought back to you in March and again now. Programming targets are considered met when the 5-year programming is at or above the 5 years of annual targets as depicted by the column on the right. Staff will program to the identified targets based on the capital allocation methodology priorities. And then when programming to these targets, we start at the top tier of the methodology and continue to program as funding is available. So top to bottom. And this is a review of the current community programs funding targets. As a reminder, safe sidewalks and safe routes to school are funding obligations. We're currently targeting $1.6 million per year for safe sidewalks, which is a maximum with our existing staffing. The VRF ballot commitment is targeted at $3 to $4 million per year with a 5-year target of $16.5 million. Our core community programs is a secondary focus item and is part of the commission discretion. The target is a minimum, currently set at a minimum of 5% of the overall capital budget with a 5-year target of $15.3 million. Then a minimum 5% was set by the commission as part of the commission targets. And then finally, there's the resolution we've talked about a few times now, the 2328 for any potential bid savings. Is this where you wanted to?
There it is. This is another short straw project. Oh, you get to. Story of my life. I'm out of control. Back on September 8th, I think last year, 2020, the commission adopted resolution 238, and it was really to address a couple of things. One is we were realizing bid savings on a lot of our projects. We were anticipating bid savings, and as well as we had some surplus property, some big dollar numbers that we were selling. So the commission adopted this resolution, and I'll go ahead and go through it. So Stacy, if you can go ahead, I'll give you some background on it. So kind of the background is during ACHD fiscal years, we would recognize some unplanned revenue from the sale of surplus property or cost savings realized from our capital projects constructed, but we really couldn't realize it until actually all the costs had been closed out in the fiscal year. And then the board would adopt budget adjustments through the fiscal year to balance or allocate any revenue from that net surplus savings or pay any additional incurred operational or project expenses. Those are when we come back to you. We used to come more often, but now those are the budget adjustments, and the budget committee comes to you with those. But the one thing we could do is identify the net surplus savings during each of those budget adjustments. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. That's kind of the background. Go ahead. So again, I guess I was a day off, September 9th. The commission directed staff to propose a resolution that prioritizes the use of any net surplus savings during the fiscal year 2021 to be programmed for community projects. So the idea is that anytime we had any realized net surplus savings, that we would dedicate those to community projects over and above what was in the budget. That was, in addition to the revenue allocation methodology in the strategic plan. Any eligible community projects could be selected based upon the integrated, 2021 integrated 5-year work plan. Those were already there. They were on a list, so it made sense that if we had that additional revenue, we could just go pick right off the top priority of those projects. But we would also look at the feasibility. Not all community projects are equal in terms of cost benefit, pedestrian system efficiency, and constructability within the fiscal year. So we were looking for projects that we could pick that could be actually built and constructed in 2021. And the board could prioritize any community projects after any net surplus savings are identified at the time of any budget adjustment. So the part of that process is the staff is required to report to the commission any net surplus savings identified prior to each budget adjustment, if any. The problem is that within the year, many of the projects that we were anticipating cost savings, they haven't closed out. I mean, it takes a year, it takes a long time to close out those projects, so we haven't really seen any of those numbers or any of the benefit of Resolution 2328. Go ahead, Stacy. So the other requirement under the resolution is the budget committee and the director are required to create a list of eligible community projects that are prioritized based upon the integrated 5-year program, feasibility, like I discussed, cost benefit, pedestrian and bicycle efficiency, and constructability within the fiscal year. And then the board can select any of those community projects to be funded with that net surplus savings. Go ahead, Stacy. So with that, Commissioner Goldthorpe contacted me a while ago. Then we started getting serious about 3 weeks ago. And this is his proposal, and that is that the resolution would be amended so that the program would be extended into 2022. The program would have a dedicated budget amount off the top, general revenue, an additional $5 million general revenue to support this resolution. Any net surplus savings would reduce, and Commissioner Goldthorpe, if I get it wrong, offset the $5 million and reduce the amount of the general revenue, which is the $5 million. Any excess would then be rededicated to the community programs. It's a little confusing, but it's kind of moving a pea in a shell.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Well,
Monty.
I think what's happening is that that because there haven't been really anything realized under the resolution, that we're trying to make sure that there's a dedicated amount that would fit within the program, and any of the money excesses, the net surplus that we would receive, would reduce the obligation under the resolution, but it would continue to be rededicated to community programs. So next slide, Stacy. So the prioritization of the selected net surplus savings program would be based upon the geographic equity of each commissioner's subdistrict. That's a request of his proposal. But here's the bottom line. It's really an additional $5 million earmark for community programs, and any net surplus savings amount goes to the integrated 5-year work program, community programs for 2022. It's really just a timing issue, but this is to make sure that we get some of with the $5 million, we get some of those projects moving and constructed and moving, and not just waiting until we have a budget adjustment. I think that's what your goal is.
No, that's not just a budget adjustment, but savings from bids. The last year we really had any significant savings from bids was 2016.
Yeah. Well, we had some in the fall, which was really the genesis of the resolution.
Yes, it was. And
So, and we had some surplus properties that we sold, but we got a nice big numbers on, so. With that, that is Commissioner Goldthorpe's proposal. Stacy, one more. It's up for for the commission discussion, and we'll take your direction on what you'd like to do.
well, I of course would like to see it happen.
President Goldthorpe, does this include, I might have missed a slide there, our GAP projects?
Yes,
Is that
absolutely.
under this umbrella? That's what this is? Okay.
Mr. President, I have a couple of thoughts on this, if I may. I'm thinking back to the presentation that I think Christie gave us a couple months ago on the overall budget allocation. Showed us a nice pie chart showing where taking our total budget, showing where it's allocated. And my recollection is that 49% of ACHD's total budget goes to maintenance, and of the remaining approximately 51%, of the total pie, 21% went to bicycle and pedestrian projects, and the remaining, what does that leave us with? About 31% or so went to then our highway projects. Is that, Christie, is that correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner McKinney, that is correct. That's what the pie chart represents. But that's
Okay.
also taking into account any pedestrian and bicycle enhancements that do occur with those road widening projects. So sidewalk,
Right.
crossings,
Mm-hmm.
all of those bike lanes that we add with the roadway projects go into that piece of the pie.
If-
So it's not just our community program.
Right,
It's
exactly.
also those
Well-
other enhancements that occur with other projects.
Of that 21% portion that's going to bicycle and pedestrian facilities, can you tell me roughly how much of that is included in our highway improvement projects and how much is in the community programs? Is it about 50-50, or is it, where do we stand?
Probably close to 50-50, because annually it's about 10 to 15 million of the road projects that are bike and ped enhancements.
Okay, and so then another 10 or 15 million goes to community projects directly.
Well, our target is 15, so if we're 15, so it's
Okay.
roughly
So-
50-50.
So this proposal from Commissioner Goldthorpe on what are we calling it again? What's the name of this?
Resolution 2328.
Okay, the
It's the net surplus savings
net
allocation.
surplus, okay, net surplus savings. Would this affect that relative proportion? Would this be now an additional amount of money going to community programs? How would that overall affect what we're spending on community programs versus other things?
Mr. President, Commissioner McKinney, yes, that would increase.
We're at 15 million under your.
15.3 is the target.
So
but-
you'd be up to 20 million, and then if any additional surplus, it could even cap the 20 million.
Okay. Let me, this thought's been dogging me a lot over the last several months. I look at, my initial reaction to, looking at how much we're spending on bicycle and pedestrian facilities compared to other expenditures, I was a little bit surprised. There's a lot of push, the advocacy groups, activists for bicycle and pedestrian facilities are very vocal and are getting a lot of attention. And I personally, frankly, wonder if we might have, our priorities have gotten pushed a little too far in that direction. And I say this because of the fact that the reality is that if you drive around Ada County and you look at the usage of bicycle facilities, it's fairly low in most places most of the time. In fact, in a lot of parts of the county, you never see bicyclists using our bike lanes, or hardly ever. And it's not that we shouldn't be building these things. I wonder if our priorities have gotten a little bit skewed. And I say that because the reality is much more than 99% of the demand on our facilities is for highway lanes. because the reality is people have to get where they need to go. And most people in Ada County realistically don't have the option to commute by bicycle. Even if they wanted to, many couldn't. And some, there are a lot who can't under any circumstance due to age or physical condition, what have you. And there are many who would like to, but the distance or topography is such that it's just, as a practical matter, doesn't work. The reality is most of Ada County is laid out in very spread out communities where people live in one place and they work over here and their shopping is here and here and here and the schools are over here. And the reality is, if you live here, you can't get along without driving your automobile for most of your destinations most of the time. And if we're using 40% of our budget to cater to desires that relate to about less than 1% of demand, that strikes me as a little bit out of balance. I don't begrudge these projects, but I think we've got to be wise and balanced in how we spend our resources. And look at the fact that, personally, I wish, Boise and Meridian and all of the, land use agencies, all of the cities in the county, I wish they would build more walkable communities. I wish they would build more places where more people can, as a realistic matter, get around walking and biking. But the simple fact is, go down Fairview Avenue. Things are so spread apart that you see very few pedestrians ever walking on Fairview Avenue, simply because destinations are spread so far apart.
And it's so dangerous.
There's that too. And so, this the development model of vast tracts of suburbia interspersed with strip malls every half mile or mile or so, frankly, is a lousy way to do things. I'd like to see it done different. But the fact is, we've got hundreds of square miles of, well, maybe that's an overstatement, but we've got a lot of area of this county that's already built that way. And they're building more that way. The simple fact is, we can't change that. We've got to help people get where they need to go. And if we're spending 40% of our enhancement budget on bicycle and pedestrian facilities, which are a great benefit to about 1% of the usage, that just seems a little bit out of whack. It strikes me that what we ought to do, and this reallocation plan is a great idea, but whatever we do, I think during this budget review process, I think it makes perfect sense to readjust some of our allocations. And it will be at the expense of some of the community programs. But I think what we've got to do is find a way to, every year, do more in improving our highway network, because it's got to be done. And we're 40 years behind on getting it done. We're so far behind. And people have a hard time getting where they need to go because of the congestion. And the congestion is because the people are here. And the people are here because they want to be here, but the congestion makes it less desirable of a place to be. But not improving these things is not going to make people go away, and it's not going to make the congestion go away. We can't relieve congestion by building more bicycle and pedestrian facilities. If the usage of our bicycle and pedestrian facilities went up by a factor of 10, it would still make this much of a dent in our traffic on our highways. And again, I'm happy to see more and more people use those facilities, but the reality is the increase in usage of those facilities is at a very small rate. And for the foreseeable future, it's going to continue to be that way just because of the physical reality of the way this county is built. I would like to see us push some of those dollars from the community programs back over into the highway programs. That's my belief of what's in the best interest of the people of this county, is to spend more of our resources on building the roads and at the same time finding ways to increase the amount of revenue and resources that we have to dedicate to these things. I'd like to see us build 2 or 3 or 4 additional widening and intersection projects every year. You're looking at $4, $5, $6 million a pop on the low side for a lot of these projects. But in reality, that's what we've got to do to get ahead of the demand, I shouldn't say get ahead of, to try to catch up with the demand, because we're so far behind of what the demand actually is. I think we need to readjust our priorities a little bit. And I know this doesn't set well with a lot of people, but I think that's the simple fact of where we are and what we need to do.
Thank you. One of the things that I've, just so that everybody will know I'm being at least a little bit consistent. When I first ran for office, I was pretty vociferous about saying what I thought needed to happen with regards to transportation in this county was there needed to be a paradigm shift. That people needed to be more cognizant of living closer to where they worked, shopped, and recreated. And that hasn't happened much. Instead of what we've seen happen is that the mortality and morbidity rates for pedestrians and bicyclists have been doubling about every year, including last year with the pandemic, when with the reduced amount of traffic on the roads, people just put the pedal down, started driving 90 instead of 65. And this is downtown, not on the interstate. Anyway, so 2 years ago, because of the fact that we have some 450 miles, and that's not lane miles, that's actual miles, of roads in this county that have no sidewalks and have no bicycle facilities other than the main lanes and a fog line. And because of the statistics for, again, mortality and morbidity, I asked for the $3 million for gap projects, and we got it. And then that changed to the revenue allocation that we passed last year in this resolution, which, sorry, isn't going to work. So I asked for it to change so that we'd have a base. All the money that we spend on real estate that includes pedestrian facilities and bicycle facilities are part of the roads. If you're talking about widening the roads and narrowing the bicycle facilities and narrowing the pedestrian facilities, then all we'll have are more people injured and killed. Frankly, if you get the opinion that I really don't care about people moaning and bellowing and griping about congestion on the roads because of their life choices, you'd probably be correct. All my life, whether I lived in Salt Lake City or Los Angeles or Chicago or anywhere else, I learned to time my trips. I learned that from watching my parents do that. And we lived in very congested areas. This is nothing like that. I've sat on task forces now for over 10 years, 11 years to be exact, having to do with determining what kind of usage we could expect from bicyclists and pedestrians if they thought it was safe to go outside. And I know for a fact that it's far more probably than 10 times the usage that you see right now. And that there's a lot of effort being made on the part of some folks, whether that's the millennial generation or others, to live closer to where they work, shop, and recreate. And I don't think now is the time at all to make it any more difficult for them to do that. And that's why I asked for this floor.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I just really want to thank you for bringing this up to the commission. And Commissioner McKinney, you mentioned a lot of different things, but I wanted to address a couple of them. My district overwhelmingly, that might not be the advocates that you're referring to, but my district overwhelmingly wants more community projects. They want to be able to walk and bike safely to their school. They want to be able to walk and bike safely to the greenbelt, and studies do show that all users benefit from better bike ped infrastructure. It reduces the chaos on the roads. It reduces the friction and hitting and killing pedestrians and bicyclists. Nobody wins when that happens. And ultimately, I think you're bringing up this really good point about this of congestion. So is the goal reducing congestion? Well, if that is, then let's talk about that, because I don't know if we really can, unless we want to gobble up all the land that we have at the expense of our air quality and quality of life. Like, that's just not something that I'm willing to give up. So I agree with the congestion piece, but I think that this is a great resolution, Commissioner Goldthorpe, and I would very much support it.
And I appreciate the way you described it, Steve.
Mr. President, and this is a great discussion. You know, I just appreciate Commissioner McKinney and Commissioner Pickering. We haven't really discussed this in a way as objectively as sort of non-personal in my experience on the commission in the past, because you've identified, you know, the fundamental challenges. It's a system. You can sit down, Steve, if you want.
I sit a lot, so this is refreshing. It's good for my back.
No, you're totally right, Commissioner McKinney, on development patterns. Development patterns in the western part of the county have followed that model. They have followed that model of you're going to drive everywhere. We're going to build out the section line roads as the major arterials for cars, and then inside the local roads will have much less car traffic, but they'll also be isolated because of the development that you might want to go to, you know, the shops, the recreation, the schools, you're going to have to drive to. Even if you can see it just across the arterial, it's not safe to do it. So congestion is a product, 99% of a product, I believe, is based on development patterns. And those development patterns they became the newest thing in the late 70s and just took off like wildfire. And we are paying a price for it, but they're there. They're already built. It's already designed. It's already built out. We can't relieve congestion either by adding bike lanes on those arterials or by widening those arterials. Congestion is going to be congestion. It's just a given. And really, I think you make a really good argument, frankly, to say we kind of have two highway districts. We kind of have a highway district representing those areas with all these section mile neighborhoods that have been developed in the last generation or so, and we have the older parts. There's a little bit of older Meridian, but mostly it's the city of Boise, in which the people are making choices, and they're saying, I want to be able to have a choice to drive and walk and take transit, and those choices are driving property values through the roof in Boise.
And we spent $50,000 a few years ago on scientific research proving that.
Yeah, so those choices are there. So we do have this huge dilemma. I mean, the easy way to do it is just take the highway district, split it in half, and let the western half deal with the development patterns there, and let the eastern half deal with the old development patterns that were built, as Commissioner Goldthorpe puts out. You know, these old roads, those crazy turn lanes that were built in the 30s, big wide roads to turn a stagecoach around, are now speed zones with no sidewalks. So there's lots of old issues that just got kicked down the road that were never addressed, that we're trying to fix. And as people come and move in, they're like, okay, if I want to live here, I can safely cycle, 85-90% of the route, but that 15% is so dangerous that I don't want to do it. I certainly won't let my kids do it. And so I want you to help me make that gap. And you're right, when we build these arterials, my preference would be if there's some way when we build out these arterials to 3 lanes or 5 lanes or whatever it's going to be, don't spend the money on bike lanes and sidewalks because they won't get used because they're dangerous and they're not connected. We're starting to develop okay, what if we actually disconnected them, kept them safe, and connected them into neighborhoods? But that's only just barely started, and most of those have been developed out. But you're right, it has to be used. We don't build roads that aren't going to be used. We do build sidewalks and bikeways along arterials that we know are not going to be used. but we hope in the near term, but we hope with protection they will be used down the road. So we just have to deal with this. What I'd like to see us shift is maybe we can grapple with this if we're looking at areas in a context rather than by funding source. And I love our staff, and I think they're doing a great job, but there is a tendency in any government agency to look at the funding source and the strings attached and then move the money through the whole process and do the planning based on funding source. Whereas we look at it, just as you described, from our neighborhoods. What is this street and this neighborhood going to be like? And we have a policy on complete streets. How do we take this public right-of-way that says this has to serve everybody and actually make it a complete street? And so what I think Commissioner Goldthorpe is getting at, what our community programs, what the integration of federal capital maintenance projects in the future is going to be, is how do we take some of the ways in which we're funding stuff and actually move towards a complete street? It may seem like that's not very efficient, because it would be really efficient to deal with the feds just on repaving. We pave it. But you know what? There's speeding, there's not good crosswalks, there's unfinished sidewalks, there's pedestrian ramps, there's all these other things that's on the street. And the one thing the neighborhood goes nuts over is, you just paved that road. Now there's going to be a project to do a crosswalk, or now there's going to be a project to put some traffic calming in. So that's why I really like, I think the approach the staff is going, and they said, yeah, it might be take a little longer. It might require, okay, this is how much it's going to cost over time. But that's a really good approach if the end result is it's a complete street within our vision. And I think that's the same with the arterials out in the western part of the county. Think of them as complete streets. It's really hard to get development patterns changed as a highway district. But I think as there's models of complete streets along arterials being developed, we're just barely starting that on Fairview and several others, that the cities will insist, okay, we have to have a change in the way we develop. But there will always be that tension. There's always going to be that different view between the older parts that really need to be fixed. And I'm the view of lots and lots of little projects that move towards a complete street and not another huge project. Although I do support the idea of connecting Glendor, which is a big project we ought to prioritize number one. And I think that's a good way to do it. Then you could say, okay, in my part of town, this is how I want this to be used. Make these bike lanes that are never used safe. The way in which a community project might be used in one of those areas might be to put some sort of physical barriers up so that people actually can safely send their kids on those routes to the schools. And I mean, it's a little like retrofitting, something that's already been built out. But I think this gives us an opportunity to see things, if we think of things as an integrated way. And that I keep raising these issues because I think it really gets to the underlying issue of development patterns. And the more we can move away from the notion that we can fix congestion, I think the better, because we're not. It's completely, the land use agencies have made those decisions years ago, and the development patterns have come up that way. We're going to still see a huge lot of pressure in the area I represent. I think part of what Commissioner May and Commissioner Pickering represent for infill. And those are very different challenges, and those are people who are coming saying, I don't want to own a car, I don't want to drive my car, but I do want to safely get around the city. And then the big T word comes up, which is, why are you collecting all this money and spending all this money and you still have a transit system that looks like the 1950s? It would be awfully good for me to be able to integrate, and that's something I think as a highway district we should be taking a lead on how to use that right away to move more help people move more, and I think we can. I think we're starting to on the model on State Street. That's a model meaning it should be replicated elsewhere, so that we get the benefit from it. So thank you. That's a long-winded way of responding, but I just want to, if there's a takeaway, is keep moving in the direction of integrating towards a complete street approach rather than a funding source approach to how we make investments. We start with the neighborhood and we end with the neighborhood. That was empty.
Mary, any comment?
First thing, the Senate is debating the property tax bill right now as we wrap up here. So we should know something here pretty soon. They're just starting the debate. They just suspended the reading. We've got a lot of different balls in the air here. We're talking about prioritization and changing our focus, et cetera. Commissioner McKinney makes a great point on the west end. District 3 is a large district from the north end all the way to Canada. So we've got the north end, we've got the Garden City, we've got Eagle, Meridian, Star. You're a little bit far out there. So people that we don't have that connectivity for people to commute to work. It's just a little bit different. So, you know, we need to keep that in mind. I do want to say that I think our primary focus of safety and maintenance is critical. We've got to maintain what we have out there in the district. I would not like to see that changed. I think if we do take our eye off that ball, we'll start to see things slowly disintegrate and that maintenance deficit that the state is now going through. I was very supportive of the GAP projects. Talking with Kent, I was part of helping put that first list together. I think we have seen great success, and we're not just talking about bicycle lanes, and we're talking about filling in those gaps in the sidewalks. And I think moving forward on that and having a dedicated fund, I think it's going to benefit all users. Is that our primary focus? No, but I think it's a good program, and I would be in support of this resolution.
Well,
but we need to keep our safety and maintenance as our primary focus. So,
Stacy, can I have the next
I don't want
slide?
us to lose the ball on that.
Okay, I got your direction. I'll prepare a resolution and we'll come back.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else?
I was just going to follow up with next steps, Mr.
Then
President.
let's do next steps.
It's the last one of my slides, the last slide.
All right. I won't make my funny comment.
That's you, okay. Nearsighted person, like I. What? All the way to the left. Oh my gosh.
Your other left.
Okay. Last slide. So these are the next steps in the process. Staff will be back before the commission on July 14th with the initial draft. That will launch the public comment period on the draft plan, which will run from July 14th through August 20th. The public and all partner agencies will have just over 5 weeks to provide feedback on that draft plan. And as always, we'll hold a public open house on the draft that first week, so that week of July 14th, and conduct public outreach via our social media outlets. We'll also continue to utilize our award-winning interactive map by which the public can review the proposed plan and provide feedback directly through that interactive map. And then I will sit for any questions.
I just have, other than being very grateful for all that you and Christine have done today, and I really am, I'm hearkening back to your second slide, I think it was, where you so succinctly showed us about $36 million of extra money that we had to raise to spend for new facilities. And the fact that we're uncapping or opening up and a new staff for Diane. We have all these extra expenses, and then we're discussing and debating, as we should, how we're going to pay for them, and we're at the same time realizing how much less of a bang for the buck that we're getting from every dollar that we raise and spend. So I would just not only thank you for this presentation, but ask the commission to keep all of those things in mind as we consider our revenue sources and where we have the greatest possibility of determining our own fate, as it were. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I just had a comment about the GAP projects. I know we've been slogging through that list the last couple of years. Could we get a list of all the things we've been able to accomplish so everybody can, especially the new commissioners, can see
Easily.
exactly?
I
Yeah,
keep
so
asking
I think
for
that
it,
would be,
too.
yeah, I think that would be beneficial in the discussion. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up, I think I heard somebody say that we hadn't taken new construction increase in our budget, and the last 7 years from 14 through 20 or 19, we did take 6 new construction for 6 of those years. So
Yep.
we have availed ourselves of that funding. So, oh, and somebody objected in the Senate, so they are reading the bill. So it'll be a while.
And what's the football game score?
Mr. Chair and Christie, thanks. Would it be possible to work, I don't want to take up extra time, but in late June with you on budget assumptions and so forth? It's been 3 years since I've been able to take my wife out of town on a trip, and we long ago set aside the first 2 weeks in July as the time. That's our anniversary too. So I'll do all the work as possible in June so that I can do that without having to interrupt. And well, I will take my iPad and Zoom. I might be distracted. So to the extent you can get some input from me prior, I'd be appreciative. I don't want to create more work for you, but work sessions in June would be, might give you a little more time too.
Mr. President, Commissioner Hanson, as Steve mentioned and the director before he left, we're going to bring some more work sessions back before this July 14th date. So I think the discussion today was robust. I think staff has a lot to materials that we can research and bring back, and we will be doing that before July 14th. Hopefully some of those decisions could be made before that date, so when we bring to you those draft documents, they incorporate your direction.
Great. Well, I'll be around the whole month of June, so.
All right, any other comments, or should we adjourn? We're adjourned.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Sorry, well, just one quick. If we could also have that overview of this enterprise fund and exactly, the benefits of doing it that way, how much, the whole workup on that, I think that would be really beneficial too before we get into the meat of the budget.
Thank you,
Trust me,
Mary.
That's coming.
Okay, thanks. Good discussion, everybody.
Bye.
I'll be there next week, so it'll be good to see everybody in person.
It'll be good to be action